Again, thank you all for attending this evening's presentation from the Pelagic Sailing Club. We are very honored today to have Bob Perry do a little presentation on his 50+ years of yacht design. We are up here in New England, but through the magic of the internet today, we get to bring Bob in from his house on the West Coast, which you can see here. For those of you that do sailing, Bob's name is well known for the multitude of yachts that he's worked on over the years. And we look forward to hearing a little bit more from him about what he's done and what his view of it is. And speaking with him when we chatted back, he said he's getting pretty good at getting yacht designs going. So we'll let you be the judge of how good he is at this. So with that, I'd like to kick it over to you, Bob, so you can let us all hear about what you've done over the course of your lifetime of 50 years of yacht design.
Okay, well, I'm 74. My dad was in the Army Air Corps in the Second World War and stationed in New Guinea, and he met my mother in Australia. They got married. Not now. They got married in Australia, and after the war, moved to Toledo, Ohio, where my dad was from, and I was born in Toledo, Ohio. My mother, being from Sydney, Australia, was not too keen on Toledo, so they decided to move back to Australia because my dad liked Australia. So I was 1 year old when we got there, and we lived in a rented 2-bedroom flat in the suburb of Sydney called Ashfield, and lived there until I was 12. And my dad's parents sort of gave him the boot when he married a native and moved to Australia. So I didn't come from a yachting family. We never had a boat. We didn't have a car. We never had a TV until we moved to America. And then in 1956, my dad came over to see his parents. And are you seeing all that red stuff over the screen? The scribbles that I'm seeing?
Yes.
You might be getting bombed.
How do I make that go away?
Is somebody controlling?
Well, I don't think I did that.
I
Does
think
someone
you're being
have
bombed.
remote access to your screen?
Not that I'm aware of. Oh, it's that Chris guy.
Not anymore. I gave up access a while ago.
How
Don't worry
Okay,
about
so-
it, Bob.
You'll have to clear the annotations, Chris. I can text you about that.
Yeah, we should get rid of that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Don't worry about it, Bob. Just keep going.
I'll just keep going. So my dad came over, saw his parents, came back to Australia and said, we can live better if we move to America. So we had a little family meeting and decided we'd move to America. And I was all hot for it because I was born in America. I was an American. So in 1957, we got on my dad brought home these fancy brochures for all these big cruise ships, but they were too expensive. So we got on an old converted Liberty ship called the Lakemba. It's since sunk, and 90 passengers, and came to America. And yeah, we did live better in America. We got our own house, we had a car, a TV. I got my own bedroom. In Australia, I slept on a sort of semi-outdoors porch, which was cold in the winter. I had a bedroom. I had a dog, which I've always wanted a dog. So yeah, life was better in America. Went through junior high and played in the band. That was my big, oh, there you go. Played in the band and got kicked out of the band because I didn't get along. I had artistic differences with the band director. And so they kicked me out, and mid-semester, so they had this meeting with the vice principal trying to figure out what class they could put me in halfway through the semester, and they decided we'll put him in mechanical drawing. So I went in mechanical drawing, and in about 2 weeks, I owned that class. It was like throwing Brer Rabbit in a briar patch. I loved mechanical drawing. And, at some point, I can't remember what grade, I had to give a talk on something using visual aids. So I decided to talk about sailing. I'd never been sailing in my life. I don't think I'd ever stepped foot on a sailboat, but I chose sailing. And I got a bunch of books out of the library and gave my talk on sailing and just slowly got sucked into sailing. And, first was all the clipper ships and the bezel, love books, and all that kind of salty stuff. And then I started picking up magazines about sailing and looking at them and getting interested. And I stayed on with mechanical drawing for 3 years. And I bought my mechanical drawing teacher, Mr. Kibbe. He helped me buy a drawing board, not a big one, sort of like 30 inches by 24 and a T-square and a triangle. And I went home and started to draw. One of the first things, what to draw? Well, I think I'll draw a boat. So I drew a boat. And it just progressed from there until I came sort of obsessed with it. Graduated from high school with a 1.69 grade point average. And none of the teachers had any faith in me except Mr. Kibbe, the mechanical drawing teacher, and my geometry teacher, who was a sailor. And he'd come by and look at what I was doing in class, and I was drawing a boat. I drew a boat every period. I carried a peachy folder with curves in it and triangles, and I would do a whole preliminary design of a boat in one period. And he knew that because I sure as hell wasn't doing geometry.
Right.
And he said, you need to talk to Bill Garden. You need to call Bill Garden. Well, I knew who Bill Garden was because I'd been buying these magazines. And I remember the first time I saw this boat there, it was a garden cruiser. And I thought, what the hell's a garden cruiser? You cruise around your garden? Well, it didn't make any sense at all, but I eventually figured it out. And he said, call Bill Garden. So I called Bill Garden, and Bill Garden said, come and visit me at my office. So I went there one Saturday. This is all in my book. You can read about it. Anyway, Bill was very kind to me. He wasn't encouraging. If anything, over the years I knew him, if anything, he was discouraging. And I think that was his way of warning me, hey, you choose this path. It's not an easy path, pal. But we became friends. I crewed on his boat, Oceanus, talked to him over the years. And of course, then I had to get into college. I wanted to go to the University of Michigan because they had a big naval architecture program, but that they weren't going to talk to me with a 1.69 grade point average. Even if they did, there was no way in hell I could have paid for that. And I got accepted. Nobody would take me. But Seattle University is a Jesuit school here in Seattle. They accepted me on a probationary basis, meaning I had to maintain a certain grade point average or they'd give me the boot. The problem was they were the most expensive school in town. And when I told my parents I got accepted at Seattle U, they said, oh, that's nice. We're not paying. So I thought, oh, okay, that's great. But luck would have it, I was in a rock and roll band and we were doing just fine. And so I paid for 3.5 years of college without any help and never graduated. And then sort of got out and sitting there and getting tired of playing rock and roll because by that time it was no longer huge teenage dances. Those had all died off when kids started smoking pot. It had turned into playing 6 nights a week in a tavern, and that was tiresome. So I finally went sit there one day thinking, what the hell am I going to do? got out the yellow pages and naval architect, Jay Benford. So I called him up and said, I want to apply for a job. And he said, okay, come over. And I lived about 20 minutes away from his office, went over there, showed him my drawings, and he said, can you start after lunch? Yeah, I can start after lunch. And how much are you going to pay me? Well, nothing. I'll give you 10% of every project we finish. So I worked for him for a year and we finished one project. I got $100, but at least it kept me off the street while the band was still making money. And then one day I was reading a yachting magazine and I saw an ad from Dick Carter saying he was looking for design help. So I called him up and he said, oh, no, you're on the West Coast. I'm on the East Coast. I don't want to take a chance of bringing you out here from the West Coast. Might not work out. I just had a bad experience with another West Coast guy who was Doug Peterson. That was a bad experience. So I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I got a 2-week vacation coming up. If you pay my expenses, I'll fly to Boston and work for you for 2 weeks to show you what I can do. He said, okay, you're on. So I flew into Boston on a Sunday night. I think I landed about 10 p.m. I had no money, had my rucksack with my drawing equipment in it. And I knew I had to get to Nahant, which is north of Boston, up towards Marblehead. And I figured if I keep the water on my right, I'll be okay. So I started to walk. I'm going to walk from, what's that airport called? Logan? Is it Logan in Boston? I'm going to walk from Logan to Swampscott. And I walked. And we get late. And finally, I'm lost. And went into a bar. The only lights were on in this bar. And I walked in. There was about 6 guys in this bar. Probably about 11 o'clock on Sunday night. And I said, I'm trying to get to Swampscott. Oh, where are you coming from? I said, I'm coming from Seattle. They said, well, you go to, how are you getting there? I said, I'm walking. Oh, well, you go this way. And so I left and I walked about 2 blocks and all of a sudden this car pulled up and window went down. Get in, kid. It was a guy from the bar. And they drove me to Swampscott and I went to work for Dick Carter. And then after a year, I'd been trying to work on my own. I was moonlighting, designing for Ted Brewer. My friend in Seattle, who also worked for Jay Benford, Nathan Rothman, he wanted desperately to start his own company. So he started Valiant and wanted me to design the boat. So I said, okay, I'll design the boat. And well, how much money do you want? I said, don't pay me any money till you get the whole thing set up, because he didn't have a pot to piss in. I didn't have a pot to piss in, but we were friends. And I said, I'll draw the boat just to make Nathan feel good. So then a few weeks later, he called me up and said, Uniflight's going to build the boat. I said, okay, now you can send me some money. And that became the Valiant 40. At the same time, I had published a design in National Fisherman and ran into this guy called John Edwards, who wanted to build boats in Taiwan. And I ended up designing a 54-footer for him that he was going to call the Hans Christian 54, but he had a falling out with the yard and it became the CT 54. And they built 100 of those. And I got paid $700 for that design and $350 a boat royalty, but they built 100 of them. So it wasn't a bad deal. And I got my foot in the door in Taiwan. So, oh, that's my house on the shores of Lake Susan. That's my front yard. I had 2 gray whales go by today about 75 yards off the beach, which is not uncommon this time of year. That's my office. That's my bathroom back there, the corner. Those are my guitars. That's my office. That's my office. Those are all my models. I got about 60 models. Now that was my last intern, Danielle. He's an Italian guy. He came over. I make the kids, the interns I've had, I make them use the old tools. These are called spline weights or ducks. Some people call them pigs, but they're 3.5-pound lead weights. And that's how we used to draw the curved lines before computers. But kids, dealing with the kids, they love to use the old stuff. They know computers inside and out, but they've never been exposed to using the old tools, and he loved it. There was a boat I drew when I was about 20. And, you know, when I look back at my old drawings, you can just see the passion I put into it as a kid. I mean, and given my circumstances, why did I ever think I could be a yacht designer? It was a crazy thought. I got my first real job when I was 10 years old in Australia. I worked in a meat market. And then I moved over here and I worked in a meat market when I was in high school. I actually enjoyed working in meat markets. So I kind of figured I'd end up being a butcher, which didn't much bother me, but I didn't think about it too hard. So I don't know, something just told me you can be a yacht designer. That's a Baba. That's actually a Toshiba 40, which is the same as a Baba 40. That's heirloom. So the format of this talk is based on the situation that about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I got a call from a yacht club saying, could you come and give a talk? And I said, yeah, sure. It was Monday afternoon. And I said, well, when do you want me to do it? It was a local yacht club. And they said, Wednesday. I said, which Wednesday? This Wednesday. I said, oh, shit, this Wednesday. Yeah, I said, I'll do it, but I can't guarantee you what I'll get. So I threw together all these images and I went and did it, and I got done. And one guy came up to me and he said, that was mesmerizing. So I thought, well, maybe I'm onto something. Maybe this whole stream of consciousness thing is better. So no note cards. You don't know what you're going to get tonight. We don't know. We'll just see. Those little ducks were for the races he won in the beer can regattas. There's a Baba 30, I think in Scotland. Nice little, I get known for double enders, but fact is I've designed more boats with transoms than I have double enders. Something about that photograph always grabs me. I don't know what it is, just being in Scotland. I'm part Scottish. There's a Baba 30, just about to get up on its foils. Of course, they weigh 12,000 pounds, so foiling isn't really an option. I don't know how many of those they built. They built a lot, probably 150. They're great little boats, fabulously built. There's another Baba. This Baba was leading a race. The other boats in the race were like 80-foot boats, but this is in Turkey, and the 80-foot boats it was beating were these traditional Turkish, I don't know what they're called, but big, clunky, clippery, traditional looking things. And here's the Baba 30, right around the mark. I like that photo. There's the Baba 30 drawing. You can see that. I mean, the one thing I'm a damn good draftsman. I mean, I'm really good when it comes to drawing. I was. Since I switched to the computer, I don't draw by hand anymore, but that's pencil and ink. And I grew up looking at the work of Bill Garden, Bill Tripp, Phil Rhodes, Augie Nielsen, Bill Lapworth, Charles Whitholtz, Wink Warner, Sparkman Stevens, all the great yacht design draftsmen. And I wanted to be one of them. There's a Baba 40. I like that picture. My buddy sailed his Baba 40 around the world, single-handed, non-stop. And it was just a stock Baba 40. He actually had pretty ratty sails, but he made it. That's down below. That's that teak interior that people think of as being traditional, but it's really not. It's really an artifact of Taiwan boat building, where the teak was plentiful and man hours were really cheap. And and designing the Babas, which are named after Bob Berg. The Chinese couldn't say Bob Berg, so they just called him Baba, which means sort of dad in Mandarin. He would just say to me, "Don't worry about the man hours. Don't just draw it. Don't worry about the man hours." And people ended up loving that interior. I mean, for you guys on the East Coast where it gets hot, you might think that's a little dark and cave-like, but in the Pacific Northwest, where it's seldom really hot, I kind of like those cave-like interiors. There's a Baba 40. I mean, it's kind of, a takeoff on the old Colin Archer style Scandinavian boat, but it's so removed. You have to stretch your imagination to draw a line between the two boats. And what I did was I tried to separate the keel from the hull. The hull's doing one thing, the keel's doing another thing. So you go back to the old wine glass full keel boats, Sparkman Stevens, Rhodes, blah, blah, blah. There was always this effort to mold the hull into the keel with this hollow garbards and wine glass section. But the keels and the hull are doing different things. So you best treat them separately. And I pulled the leading edge of the keel back and gave it a decent foil. There's a Baba 40 with a pilot house. That's the boat we all should own. That is really fabulous boat. The only problem with that boat is it doesn't back up worth a damn. Anytime you have a full keel and a hole cut in the rudder for the propeller, you can kiss good performance in reverse goodbye. It's well, one day I was bored here a couple of years ago, and I was thinking, what would I design for me and my two grandkids? Not my wife, because she's got her own interests and activities, and maybe she'd come along once in a while, but just if it was me and my grandkids. So I drew what I called a Buppy Boat. And I started smaller, ended up at 62 feet. Buppy is what my grandkids call me. Somehow they couldn't manage Grampy, so I became Buppy. So I just drew that boat for me, just having fun, just trying not to be bored. So that's a double ender, which wasn't what I started out with, but I morphed it into a double ender because somebody said, what would a Baba boat be like drawn today in that style? So I gave it a pointy stern. And the interesting thing is that boat's going to be built in the Philippines. I have a client now, but we're doing the one that's not the double ender. It's the transom stern. But other than that, it's pretty much that boat with the transom. This is just a detail sheet from a boat I designed for a couple of doctors in Florida. Before I was drawing on the computer, and I just show you this because it shows you, when you look at this, you should see immediately, hey, this guy loved what he was doing. He was having fun. He was producing more than just a working document. He was producing a piece of art. So there. Well, that's a boat I did for some guys that had a CT 65 and they wanted a big boat, bigger than the CT 65. They called that the Blue Pearl, kind of that quasi clippery, whatever look, but it's a look I'm comfortable with. If the client wants it, I can give it to him. That's me in 1977. And, I look back at pictures like that and I just wonder what was going through your head. I mean, why did you think you could do this when all the odds were against you? I was married. I think I was married then to Jill. Yeah, I was, because I was wearing that watch and she macrameed me a watch band for that. So yeah, I was married to Jill and just sort of blindly charging along, getting more and more clients. There's the Buppy Boat. That's the one that's going to be built in the Philippines.
Are you going to build one for yourself?
No, I'm 74, and right now with this compression fracture in my disc, I couldn't even climb on board of it. No, begin with, I can't afford $2.5 million to build it. Okay, I'm just a shoemaker, and I can't afford my own shoes. No, but no, I wish, but I live on the water. We designed and built the house of our dreams. I got an indoor swimming pool. I got this big office here. I'm comfortable. I don't need to do anything. I got plenty of friends who'll take me sailing. That's a boat I did for a San Francisco guy. That's a true motor sailor, but it sailed great. It really sailed good, but it did 9.5 knots under power because we put 140 horsepower in it. In idle, it did 4 knots, which made docking kind of exciting. That was a good boat, Capaz. It's been on to 3 owners now and did a couple of years in the South Pacific. This is the boat I did for an East Coast client. It was built by Pacific Seacraft, and it's been sitting in the yard now for, my guess is 3 years. It's never been launched. It's 95% done, but not finished. You can see it has 2 cockpits. It has an aft cockpit and a center cockpit. Complex, probably the most complex deck plan I ever did. And I rue the day when he asked me, I'm not sure if I want a center cockpit or an aft cockpit. And my answer was, well, you could have both. I'm sorry I ever said that, because he said, okay, I have both. That's the boat right there. That artwork is done by a friend of mine in Alabama named Jody Culbert III. I don't draw in 3D. I draw in 2D. I'll be damned if I'm going to learn to draw in 3D at 74 years old. I think in 3D, I draw in 2D. I give my 2D drawings to Jody. He turns them into 3D. He's owned my boats before. He knows how I think. He can read my mind. We work as a seamless team, but he's as good as it gets when it comes to doing 3D images. This is the carbon cutter. This is probably the most unusual project I ever had. I had a guy call me, wanted to come have a meeting. He wanted a boat. I said, okay, come on. So he came down and he told me what he wanted based on his previous boat. And when we talked on the phone, and when he got here, I sort of in my mind had a picture of what he wanted. And the picture in my mind was a William Atkin design boat called Tally Ho Major. And so he showed up and we chatted for a while. And I said, well, I think this is, I showed him my computer screen. I think this is kind of the look you're after. And he opened his briefcase and pulled out a sheet. It was another William Atkin design, similar to the one I just showed him. So immediately we were on the same page aesthetically. So we knew the kind of, but you want a full keel offshore cruising boat in that style. So I produced a complete preliminary design package, and then we met here. And he said, where are we going to build it? I said, we're going to build it in Anacortes. Anacortes is an hour north of here on the water. And he said, oh, that would be good because I go through Anacortes twice a week. I live up in the San Juan Islands. I said, well, you should stop in at the boatyard and check them out and see what you think. They'd be a good builder. So he did. And when the preliminaries were done, we had a meeting with the builder here at the house, and sitting here, just builder has a nice presentation, bid package. And he shows it to the client, and the client goes over it. And he said, I don't want to bid. No. He said, I want time and materials. Well, every builder wants time and materials. It's just like a blank checkbook. But he said, I think a bid is just an excuse to cut corners. I want to do it time and materials. Okay, fine. Then he said, I'll take 4. So the builder and I looked at each other. trying not to look shocked. And you want 4. Okay, 4. And want them in carbon fiber. Well, the builder had built 17 carbon fiber race boats. He'd never built a carbon fiber cruising boat. But the client was very technically savvy, a pilot and into high-tech lenses for industry. So he wasn't afraid of technology. So he said, I want them all in carbon fiber. So, fine, off we go. Off we go to races. 4 carbon cutters. We've got 2 of them launched now. Third's just about ready to go in the water, and the 4th is about 50% done. The COVID thing kind of slowed the yard down. That's the carbon cutter right there.
What was he going to do with 4 of them?
I can't tell you. It's a secret. They're all his. He keeps the first 2 in his own marina. Up in the San Juans, he has his own marina, and then doesn't everybody? But they're about $1.5 million a piece. He's gonna have 4. And they are fabulous boats. They are amazing boats. And why is there a gap where the mast comes through the deck? The only reason is aesthetics. That was the look of that. It's kind of back to that old Bristol channel cutter look, which is an English look, but William Atkin, which you guys should know his name, his Eric design was the design that eventually became the West Sail 32. So William Atkin is a very famous American designer. Do your homework now. So this is that kind of look with the split. Back in the old days, they thought it was dangerous to take the mast through the cabin trunk. They wanted the mast to go through the deck. Well, we know different now, but that's the look. It raises hell with the interior arrangement when you put that chop in there, but deal with it. That's the interior. This is designed to be a boat to go offshore and stay offshore for long periods of time. The client had kind of an apocalyptic vision, and no propane, electric, lithium batteries, Watt-C hydro generators, 2 of them hanging off the transom, internal lead ballast, big head, big shower, big forecastle forward. You can see it has its own ladder down, big forecastle, pilot berths, quarter berths, watertight doors into the engine room. This is serious. This is like your anti-Beneteau. You couldn't get much different to a Beneteau than this. It's a serious purpose-built boat. That's hull number 1. Coming out of the shop. Pretty, huh? There's hull number 1 sailing along. That's me steering and the builder just to my right. And we are cleaving the water. You hear that sound, oh, it has a bone in its teeth. Well, that's the last thing I want. I don't want a bone in the boat's teeth. That's just disturbing the water. I want the boat to cleave the water, kiss the water gently and just slice through like you see there. No muss, no fuss. There we go. Zooming along. The Watt-C hydro generators haven't been mounted yet. That's the owner standing up holding the backstay. He didn't really know how to sail. There we are. Look at that beautiful bow wave. There we are. Outboard rudder. Why an outboard rudder? Because the client wanted an outboard rudder. He wanted to be able to repair the rudder at sea if he needed to. So that rudder was designed to be able to come off at sea. It's all carbon fiber, so the entire rudder weighs about 60 pounds. How easy would it be to take it off if you were at sea? I don't think it'd be very easy, but it's physically possible. There we are again. Carbon cutter. This is a Cheoy Lee 48. You know, when Cheoy Lee approached me, man, that meant a lot to me. This is really early. This is 1979. And when I was a kid, I would write letters to all the boat people and say, please send me all your brochures. You know, just stupid letters, you know, written by a kid. But a lot of them sent me back nice packages. And one night, it was a Sunday night, the phone rang and my dad answered and said, oh, it's for you, Robert. And I got on, it was the Seattle dealer for Cheoy Lee. And oh, I got your letter. I said, I'm just a kid, I'm sorry. And he sent me all the Cheoy Lee brochures. So Cheoy Lee always was special to me. And they asked me to design some boats for them. So I did. That's the Cheoy Lee 48. This is a power boat, obviously designed based on another power boat I did for a resort in the Florida Keys called come on, help me here. It's like the most expensive resort in the United States.
Palm Island,
Palm Island. Is that it? Palm Island?
Little Palm Island. Yeah, and it is the most expensive.
I'm giving my talk. Please go away. All right. I'm giving my talk. Please. Bye. Yeah, I did a commuter boat for them, a little ferry boat for them. And then I kind of morphed it out to it would be a comfortable cruising boat, kind of a 1920s look. But most people don't come to me for power boats. There's the old CT-54. You gotta remember, when I designed that boat, I was 26 years old and poor as a church mouse. And just, I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know. But they built 100 of them. There it is again. That's not bad for a kid. Pretty damn good. I never went to Taiwan back then, but they sent me photographs of the boat when they rolled it out of the shed before it was done. And I looked at it and I just couldn't believe how beautiful it was. And I just couldn't believe it. That's the CT-56, which is the big brother to the 54, which is a totally different design, but didn't sell as well as the 54, which might have been due to a number of factors, but it was a better boat. That same kind of pseudo clippery look, romantic. When I took my family to the BVI's and got this CT-54 charter boat with a skipper and a cook. And we got there and it was nighttime. We walked down the dock and my two boys, I think they were at 10 and 8 at the time, Max and Spike. And they looked at the boat. Oh, that is great. It's just like a pirate ship. So I thought, yeah, that's kind of what I had in mind. That's the CT-65 with a hard Dodger. That's the CT-65. This is owned by a Norwegian guy who does charters, but he does charters to places most people probably wouldn't want to go to. That big box on the stern, that's a hot tub. That's his hot tub. That's the CT-54. Those are the drawings I did when I was 26. And I had to do the structure. And I didn't know my head from a hot rock about fiberglass structure. So I called Ted Brewer because I'd done some moonlighting work for Ted. I said, would you design the structure? He said, fine. He charged me $150. That came out of my $700 for the total design. But, and then of course the yard ignored his structural design drawings and did it their own way, but that's boatyards for you. That is 6 CT-65s racing in the Mediterranean. in Europe, they called them Scorpio 72s. But that's what they are. That's the CT65 right there. So you can see there, I separated, it's not a full keel, it's a low aspect ratio fin and a separated rudder and skeg. Ugh. Oh, do you know who that is? I'll give $1 to whoever can tell me who that guy is with me. Come on. That's Dick Carter.
Carter.
If you don't know who Dick Carter is, shame on you. He was the enfant terrible of the late 60s, 70s of IOR. And he was like the opposite of me. He came from a very wealthy family, very wealthy. But he's the guy that hired me. And, you know, when I worked for him, I told the other guys, Chuck Payne was there, Eve Marie Tanton was there, and Mark Lindsay was there. The four of us there worked for Dick. Dick did no drawing. He just sold the designs and we did all the work. And I told the other guys, I'm going to quit. I'm going to move back to Seattle and open my own office. They said, well, Dick won't let you go. He's just going to offer you so much money that you can't afford to leave. And I said, well, that would be fun. So I told him, I said, I want to have a talk with you. So we worked in a 5-story, 15-foot square concrete tower, which was a watchtower over Boston Harbor to watch out for submarines. We just call it the tower. And Dick's house was next door about 8 feet away. And it was a sort of a neo-Greek Parthenon type mansion. It was across this little bay from where Henry Cabot Lodge lived. And it was pretty regal digs. And he never let us go into the house. We always were in the tower. But so for the talk, he said, oh, come into the house. So I went in and sat down and I just laid it all out for him, waiting to see how much he was going to offer me to stay. I just told him, here's when I'm going to go back and start my own business, and I'm going to be not my name on the door, damn it. And we got done, and I sat there and waited for this big offer, and Dick just looked at me and said, well, good luck to you, Bob. So off I went back to Seattle on my own with, sometimes when you're young, you don't know if you're just stupid, you don't realize how daring what you're doing is. But I was stupid.
Bob, can you tell us where this tower is? Which one? There's a few up and down the coast, I'm aware of.
It's on the tip of Nahant, off Swampscott Revere, that area, just south of Marblehead. You go out the Nahant's this peninsula, and it's right on the tip of Nahant. That's Dick. The weird thing about it is, I look older than he does now. And he was older than I was back then, but we're good buddies. You know, when I drew the Valiant 40, I was working for Dick, and Eve Marie Tanton, Chuck Payne looked at it. Oh, do you really think a boat should be shaped like that? And I said, yeah, why not? So they sort of ridiculed me, which I was used to. I grew up with ridicule. And I showed it to Dick and he just laughed. And then years later, this is years later, at the Annapolis show, I saw Dick. I hadn't seen him since I left the tower, and went up and, the old reunion. And he looked at me and said, you were right. And that meant a lot to me. You were right. So we're good friends now. We talk all the time. He's pretty deaf, so it's hard to communicate, but we're good buddies. That's a boat I designed for Emil Doppiera. So if that name is familiar, Doppiera, he was the son of one of the Doppiera brothers who invented the musical instrument known as the dobro, which is used a lot in country western music and bluegrass music. But unfortunately, Emil died before we could build the boat. This was the old man's boat. He'd done a circumnavigation on a schooner that I didn't design, and now he wanted an old man's boat. So that was it. That's a beautiful 3D model done by a friend of mine, Rick Beto, before I met Jody. You don't think I do catamarans? I do catamarans. This is a 54-foot catamaran I did call Little Wing. It's a great boat. You can see there those things poking out of the deck. Those are asymmetrical dagger boards. Because these stupid little low aspect ratios, keels they put on production cats don't work worth a damn. You got to have a good foil down there. Anyway, that's my catamaran. And that's a boat I did for a Seattle ophthalmologist. And this boat now is in Canada with a new owner who is sort of restoring it. But that's Eclipse. Great boat, fast boat. Under the water, you'd be surprised what it looks like. This is Yoni, designed for a retired dentist. It's an aluminum boat, 50 feet long, 50,000 pounds, 20,000 pounds ballast, built by Eric Jesperson up in Victoria, BC. Now owned by a family. And the last picture I got from them, they were in South Africa. But I mean, the client, he first had me draw a 47-foot boat. Then the day I gave him the last bill for the 47-footer, he said, all right, well, now we're going to start again. I said, what do you mean? He said, now we're going to do a 50-footer. I said, what do you mean? He said, if I built that 47-footer, it would be like marrying my high school girlfriend. He said, now I know how the process works. Let's do it again. And we're going to do a 50-footer. So we built this boat. It was an expensive boat, beautiful boat. He never used it. He was one of these guys with money that he liked to buy things. He had fabulous Les Paul matching pair of guitars. He didn't play the guitar. He had these fabulous skis. He didn't ski. He had a saxophone. He didn't play the saxophone. He just liked having things. But he was a great guy and he paid his bills. And so there you go. That's Ricky Nelson. That's my Esprit 37. That's me at the helm. And the guy in the red sweater to the left is Nathan Rothman, who started the Valiant Corporation. That's hull number 1 of the Esprits that I bought. Just after I got married, my first kid was coming along. And why did we call the boat Ricky Nelson? I don't know. We were sitting around the table one night trying to think of boat names. And it just popped into my mind that a lot of famous old boats have named after men, because I've never ascribed gender to boats. I wouldn't demean a boat by saying it's a male or a female. But boats named after men. And I said, well, how about Ricky Nelson? And everybody laughed. And I thought, that's exactly the reaction I want. I'm going to call it Ricky Nelson. And I got to meet Ricky Nelson shortly before he died. The guy called me up and, oh, I know you're a Ricky Nelson fan. I see your boat. And how would you like to meet Ricky Nelson? He's coming to town. I said, love it. Anyway, Foxfire, designed for a guy in Oxnard, California. Very light, very fast. Leisure furl boom. Leisure furl boom developed in New Zealand about 25 years ago. The first time I sailed a boat with a leisure furl boom, which was Yoni, the aluminum boat I just showed you. My wife was on board and fiddling around with the main, and my wife said, I don't know why all boats don't have this. So I'm a fan of leisure furl. Foxfire, this boat just sold. It's sort of a cruising sled. It's not quite an ultralight by today's standards, but close to it, built by Dennis Choate down in Long Beach. This is Free Range Chicken. This is another California client. He called me one day and said, I want you to design me a 56-foot IMS boat, and I'll meet you at the Newport Beach show, the California Newport Beach. And I went there and said, why me? I said, I designed the Baba 30. And he said, well, I think you can do it. And I said, well, I think I can do it too. I just have a hard time believing somebody else thinks I can do it. So I designed a boat for him called Stealth Chicken. And then after Stealth Chicken, we did Free Range Chicken. And this boat, and he's had some health issues, so he has to get rid of the boat. And this boat is just sold. Stealth Chicken sold and came to Seattle recently. And Free Range Chicken, I can't remember where it's going, but that's Free Range Chicken. Just big, long, light, high performance cruising boat. There's the interior. You can see that if you look at the focal point of the interior is what? What's the focal point? What do you see? What's the part that got all the attention? The galley. Cruising is all about eating. So, and I like to cook. I'm not a chef, but I like to cook. So make the galley good. So this boat has a good galley. Anyway, that's the interior of Free Range Chicken. This is Francis Lee. I've known this guy for 30 years, and we always talked about boats. We had similar ideas about boats. And I don't know, 6 years ago, he called me up and said, I want to come and talk to you about a boat. And he said, I want it long, and I want it light, and I want a double ender. And I like ocean. And then he rattled off all these double enders that he liked, and they were all boats I liked. He knew that, and I knew that before we got together. We both had the same sort of pantheon of fabulous double enders. So we whipped up this preliminary, and he said, well, let's do it. So we built it 62 feet long. It weighs 19,400 pounds. Beam, 9'10". And let me tell you, this is the most benign, well-behaved, fast, stiff boat. Oh, well, this is a power boat I drew for the same guy. I decided he wanted a power boat now. So I drew a long, skinny power boat. But then he got cancer. So we're over the cancer thing. So we'll see what happens to this. In some form, it will probably get built. That's Francis Lee, and that's me at the helm. And it's, and what I did was what the mistake most designers do with a double ender is they let the stern get too pointy, too fine. The bow should suck and the stern should push. You want pressure aft. And the way you get pressure aft is you have volume aft. And it's hard to push volume aft in a double ender because the natural development of the shape is to let it get pointy, and that's what you see in most double enders. But that's not the stern that works. So where I got my inspiration from this stern, I'm good friends with Laurie Davidson, the New Zealand designer that did Black Magic, the America's Cup boat, and I got involved in a lawsuit. I was Laurie's expert witness, so I had the lines to Black Magic, and I looked at Black Magic's bow, and the rule for the America's Cup boats, they weren't the 12 meters, they were the next ones. The rule for those America's Cup boats made it difficult to push volume into the ends. You want volume into the ends because that gives you what's called Prismatic Coefficient, which is a term that gives you a number for the relative volume in the ends versus the volume in the middle. So you want to push volume into the ends in some cases. So I took his bow shape and put it on the stern of Frankie. And Frankie will do 14 knots effortlessly. You wouldn't even blink. There's Frankie racing there, not much wind. There's Frankie. There we're doing about 14 knots. You can see, look at the water. There's just no muss, no fuss. But of course, that's what you get with 9'10" beam. Kim loves that boat. That's Free Range Chicken. He raced the boat and did fine, but it really was a cruising boat. That's an Islander, Freeport 36, which they sold probably 350 of those boats. Of all the boats I designed, that boat sort of exceeded my expectations more than any other. It's a great sailing boat and a lot of happy owners. That's the Flying Tiger 10 meter. I was doing a project in China with Bill Stevens, who's, you think of Stevens 47, Stevens 44, built in Taiwan. He was that Stevens. And he said, we should design a boat for the Chinese. Okay. So we designed this Flying Tiger 10 meter, built it in China. And which I like because, you know, I don't know, figured it out yet, but I did a lot of work in Taiwan, a lot of work. One year I made 5 trips. I tried my hardest to learn to speak Mandarin because I just got frustrated not being able to communicate, and they were trying to communicate in English. So why can't I try and speak Chinese? And actually, I got pretty good at it. Not fluent, but I can make what I need to say understood. I can't always understand what they say back to me, but we did that boat in China. They built 120 of those. That's a Flying Tiger right there. I just like that. I like the food. Taiwan food's amazing. Flying Tiger. This is a boat. This is a schooner I did. Remember the little gizmo called the Palm Pilot years ago? The Palm. It was one of the first like handheld Framises. This is designed for the guy that invented the Palm Pilot. He wanted a schooner for San Francisco Bay, and he really wasn't going to go anywhere other than San Francisco Bay. But he had his little cruising route that he always did, and about the only thing he demanded was a 50-gallon holding tank because San Francisco Bay was cracking down on dumping your sewage. So we built this boat up in Canada, the same yard that built Yoni, but this boat was wood composite over a foam core. They did a beautiful job. That's the boat there. Okay, so why are the gaffs so droopy? Because the client wanted them droopy. He had in his head this image of these old California, San Francisco Bay scow schooners. They were called scow schooners. And they were big old scows with schooner rigs, obviously. So he liked that droopy gaff look. This rig is all carbon fiber. And the only thing I did that was sort of innovative was rather than have a throat halyard and a peak halyard, which if you've never sailed a gaff rig, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But most gaffs have 2 halyards, one at the mast, that's the throat, that's the throat halyard. Then there's one halyard down at the end of the gaff, and that's called the peak halyard. So I changed that into 1 halyard, and the 1 halyard ran to a track on top of the gaff, so you could change the point where you picked the gaff, and but as is probably predictable, the client probably never moved it after we rigged it and sailed it the first time. But this boat turned out to be a fabulous boat. That's a Passport 40. Did those in Taiwan. Built a lot of those. Started the Passport line, and very popular boat. That's an Islander 28. That was my first project for Islander. I was at the Long Beach Boat Show. Nathan and I had a booth. We were promoting the Valiant 40, which nobody had ever heard of. And here we were. I had time off working for Dick Carter and flown out to Long Beach to work at this show. And here's Nathan and I, 10 hours a day, standing in this little booth with not a real boat, just drawings and a model, trying to push the idea of a Valiant 40. And one night, these 4 guys walked up, and they're sort of looking around, and I go, well, one guy, I'm president of Islander Yachts. Oh, really? I said, you need a new designer. That's exactly what I said. You need a new designer. He said, yeah, well, we're thinking about it. So we did some talking, and they'd never met me. They didn't know me from Adam. But I went back to Boston and drew my ass off. Every night I'd come home from the tower and I'd sit down, and I was just throwing 28-footers at them as fast as I could draw them. And they finally said, okay, you've got the job. They sold 600 of those, and I got a 1% royalty. And that led to the Islander 32, the Freeport 36, the Islander 26. That was a lot of money. One time I went down to the Islander plant, and I went into the big, huge shed where all the boats were lined up, and every boat I could see was my design. That felt pretty damn good for a kid that had a 1.69 grade point average. That's an Islander 32, kind of old fashioned looking today with a long bow overhang and that, but you know, I mean, that's a damn good looking boat. That's a classic, beautifully proportioned boat. I don't say that to toot my own horn. I just say it because I know what a beautiful looking boat looks like. That's Icon, built in New Zealand, carbon fiber for a Seattle client. It was supposed to be a racer cruiser, but the client was about, I think, 75 when we started the project. And as a cruising boat, it was a little bit much for him to handle. So it's currently being sold, but fabulous boat. My son, when he graduated from high school, the builder had been up here, and having dinner one night, the builder said to my son, well, you should come to New Zealand. So after dinner, my son said to me, I think I should go to New Zealand. So when he graduated from high school, we gave him a trip to New Zealand where he worked for a few weeks at the boatyard. Then he went off traveling. Then he enjoyed traveling more than he liked working at the boatyard. But he called me one night and guess where I am? I don't know. He said, I'm in the boat shed. We're cooking the boats. They have to cook the carbon fiber and epoxy. And he said, I'm on the all-night cooking crew. So that was kind of cool. That's the boat there, Icon. That's taken at the Perry Rendezvous. Beautiful boat, beautiful interior. That's Icon there. So you can see, look at that sail plan. You can see why, if you've got a couple in their 70s and the wife has one bad leg, that's probably not going to be the best cruising boat for you. But nice boat. This is a boat designed for an East Coast guy. Had one of my boats. He wanted a boat he could put in a shipping container. So this boat was designed to fit in a shipping container to be shipped all over the world, which he did. Of course, the keel comes off and rudder, but it fits in a container. And we ended up building 4 or 5 of these. He's still got the boat up in Maine. He's in his mid 80s now, and he still races this boat. There it is right there, built at Schooner Creek down in Portland. Islander 28, my first boat for Islander. I mean, how can you argue with that? That's a pretty little boat. That's the schooner that was built up in Canada for the Palm Pilot guy. It was a beast. It roared right along. That's just a model built by my friend Peter Kunst because he loved the design so much he wanted to build a model. He didn't have a client for the model. He just built it for himself and ended up selling it to a guy that owns one of my boats. And the client for that design had a Hinckley. And in the end, he just wanted a replacement for the Hinckley. But in the end, he just decided, no, I'll stick with my Hinckley. You know, he's a nice guy, but he made a mistake. He should have done this boat. That's my catamaran.
What was the scale on that model?
I don't know. Probably, I'd guess 1/2 inch to the foot. Possibly 3/4 of an inch. And he was going to send it to me. I said, don't send it to me. I don't have a place for a model that big. I mean, I got 60 models on the walls of my house. I don't have a place for another model. You know, the power boat I did that. This is my idea of an East Coast styled power boat, but it's much loved, and I think it's a handsome little power boat. Built by the same guy that built this boat. This is a Loon, built for a guy that wanted a double ender, and built by his son-in-law who built the power boat. And the only thing unusual about Loon is he wanted a pointy stern. You know, I don't like pointy sterns, but he wanted a pointy stern. So I gave him a pointy stern. And they're good friends with the Blacks that Bill Black sailed his Valiant 40 around the world and got the CCA Blue Water Cruising Medal for that. But they're best pals and they cruised together. So I gave Loon the exact same freeboard amidships as the Valiant 40 because the owner of Loon's wife had bad knees. And I wanted to make it easier for her to cross from one boat to the other. Gee, I forget his name. A doctor, orthopedic surgeon, pediatric orthopedic surgeon. Ah, damn, son. Terrible getting old. This is a boat I designed for a European guy. The boat was built in Holland. He sailed it around, ended up in Sumatra, I think, and he got sick. And they had to sell the boat, so he sold it to a German family, 2 daughters, and they just started cruising all over in it and changed the name to Marlin. It's all aluminum, gorgeous boat. Unfortunately, the husband died here a couple of years ago, so it's got a new owner now. That's a Norseman 447. That's a very popular boat, built in Taiwan. That's the original aft cockpit version. It's I think the only boat I ever designed that began life from a sketch on a restaurant napkin at breakfast one morning with the client. Anyway, there's a Norseman 447. I mean, that's a center cockpit boat, but for a 44-foot center cockpit boat, honestly, those are my dogs, Ruby and Pearl. Honestly, I don't think they got much better looking than that. I think I did a pretty damn good job on making it look like a good boat. That's a Norseman 447. Now, if you look forward of the mast, you'll see a trick I used. You see that kind of curved shape in the deck around that hatch? What I did was I put a bubble on the deck camber. I used a normal deck camber. Then I introduced an area of the deck that was a much higher, smaller radius. So I superimposed a bubble on top of the normal deck camber so I could gain headroom below discreetly so you wouldn't really see. And the way I disguised that, you see those prongs that are sticking out, port and starboard alongside the mast, those pickle forks, I call them pickle forks. Those were there to hide the profile of the bubble. Since that, a lot of people have copied that, but I'm telling you, I'm the guy that did it first. That's a Nordic 40, just a pretty, normal, conventional boat. That's a Nordic 44, just a great sailing boat. That's Night Runner, designed for a Seattle maritime attorney who had a very traditional William Atkin design, tally-ho major. And then he wanted a new boat, and he wanted a boat designed by Bruce King. He's up in Maine. And he brought me the drawings. He said, well, I've heard that the performance is a little bad downwind. Can you fix that? And I said, I'm not going to fix another designer's design. You know, that's it's kind of like using his toothbrush. I'm not interested at all. I was really disappointed. I said, why don't you let me draw you a whole new design? We can fix the handling problem. So he said, okay. I said, we'll come back Tuesday. And he came back, and I thought, what the hell am I going to draw? What the hell am I going to draw? Then I said, I'm going to draw a boat that looks like the boat he has now, because people like what they know. So I drew Night Runner, and he came in Tuesday, and he's a pretty taciturn guy, big, not big, but sort of a kind of a running back build and sonorous voice. And he looked at the drawing and just nodded his head and said, I like it. So unfortunately, he died about a year ago, but he kept that boat from the time we built it till he died. And it just recently went to a young couple in San Francisco, but he won everything. He went around Cape Horn on that. He won every race in the Pacific Northwest you could possibly win. There's the boat out of the water. So you can see out of the water, it's not the old-fashioned clunker you might expect. It's a pretty slick boat. A beautiful boat. You know, in terms of helm feel, you will never sail a boat that feels more delicious than Night Runner. There's the interior, engine in the middle off the galley there, and just quarter berth and double quarter berth and pilot berths and nothing special. There's the sail plan. Just, oh man, one of the most fabulous boats to sail. That's a boat I drew. I can't even read the date, but 68. So I was probably 19 or 20 years old when I drew that. Damn good thing nobody built it, but just a kid having fun, dreaming of being a yacht designer. There's another one I drew when I was a kid. Obviously, you can see the Bill Garden influence is pretty heavy, but then that's how you learn. You copy the guys you idolize. There's another one, Billow. I would go racing on Sundays. I raced sometimes 4 times a week. It's the only way I got to sail. My family didn't have a boat. So the only way I got to sail was to crew on other people's boats. And, you know, everybody always needs crew. And if you're good, they always ask you back. So I was never lacking for rides. And after the race, I'd come home and I would draw the boat I think would have won that day. So for some reason, I drew this, Billow. That's another one I drew when I was a kid. That would actually work. The mast is a little tad bit too far forward, but that would work. But you can see, you know, in 1964 or 5, it was girls, guitars, and boats for me. I was pretty dedicated to what I was trying to do. That's the interior of a CT 65. It shows you that what people fell in love with those early Taiwan boats. It's teak on teak, teak on teak. That big stairway, people loved that. Actually, that was the client's idea, not my idea, but it was a good idea. That's same boat. Passport 40. Passport 40. When I got this first letter, it came on stationery. It said, across the heading on the stationery said, frozen foods, no, yacht builders, frozen foods, and eel farms. Well, eel farms were big in Taiwan. They would raise eels and ship them to Japan. Eel is actually very tasty. But I saw that station. I thought, well, this is bullshit. I mean, they're not going to have me design a boat. So I said, okay, I'll design a boat for you, $10,000. Then shortly after, I get a letter back and it said, with a check, it says, okay, here's $9,000. We'll give you the other 1,000 when you're done. Well, I'd never mentioned royalties. So this became the Passport 40, and they built 150 of them. And Wendell, who ran the yard, an American guy, he used to laugh at me and say, yeah, I give you a royalty to the builder under the table. But Passport 40, but I did other passports and got royalties. Good boat. Nice drawing. Passport 47. I like this boat. I like that chopped off stern, which is a feature I got from studying the work of Bill Tripp. Not the current Bill Tripp. The current Bill Tripp is Bill Tripp III. The famous yacht designer from the 50s and 60s is Bill Tripp II. And so that's why I got that. That's a nice, clean looking boat. That's a Passport 52 or something. I got them all confused. That's about as Euro as I got. I finally quit. I'm not Euro. I can't do Euro. I'm not Euro. I'm a guy in a flannel shirt that lives in the Pacific Northwest. I'm never going to be Euro. So sorry. That's a Saga 43 built up in Canada. Long and skinny, great boat. Not the best build, and the company was a little shady. But if you get the deep keel version, it's a great sailing boat, just a real peach. Tiana 48. After the Tiana 37, which is another huge hour-long talk, I did a Tiana 52 and I did a Tiana 48. And that's a good boat. Tiana 48. Center cockpit. That is the boat I did for a guy in Arizona who, before we could start building it, he crashed his private plane into a mountainside. So that didn't go anywhere, but that was the concept. That is Stealth Chicken, the boat that was built for my California client, built by Westerly Marine. They did a beautiful job. This is a great boat. Won a lot of races, very comfortable below. There it is, Stealth Chicken. That's the Stevens 52, built in China at the same yard that was building the Flying Tiger. And they were at that time building passports too. We only built 4 of these. It was like 5-foot draft. And for a 52-foot boat, that doesn't work. But the client, Bill Stevens, wanted shoal draft, but beautifully built boat, very comfortable. See the fighting chairs in the stern that he wanted? I argued against those. That's stupid, those fighting chairs. But I'm telling you, when you're out sailing, that was a prime place to sit, that's for sure. That's a Toshiba 36, which is a development of the Tiana 37. They built 600 Tiana 37s. And that was a popular, one of these quasi Colin Archer-ish looking, Scandinavian-ish looking double enders. But this might have been the best one I did. One of these is going to be in the next Golden Globe race. A guy named Guy Debord. He's going to race one. He's took the bowsprit off, but we'll see how that works. That's a good boat. You can see if you look down the title block that I was trying to write Chinese just to help. I don't know what it is. Trying to impress people, I guess. That's the bottom of a Tiana 37. And there you can see what I was doing was I was separating the hull shape from the keel shape. The hull's the hull, the keel's the keel. That's when is in Hong Kong. That owner races his boat and takes very good care of it. That's a Tiana 52. One of those was bought by Craig Breedlove, who was one time like the fastest man in the world with land speed records. And he sold his boat to Lowell North, the famous sailmaker. And so that boat's for sale right now, actually. Tiana 52, Tiana 37. The bald guy might be the client. I don't know, I've never met him, but he takes good care of the boat and he obviously loves it. That's the hull lines to the Tiana 37. This is back when you drew lines by hand. And I'm telling you, this was a test. If you couldn't draw lines by hand, you were not going to be a yacht designer. And I'm telling you, there's a lot of work and effort. To do that drawing to a high standard. Some guys do it to a low standard, but I have no interest in that. To do it to a high standard, that's about 4 days intense work with making those lines. Every intersection you see from those 3 views, profile, plan, actually 4 views, profile, and then below that, the plan, and then to the right, the sections, and then below the plan view, it says diagonals. Those are diagonal cuts through the hull. But all those intersections have to agree. And it's hard work, but if you can't do it, you can't call yourself a yacht designer. I learned when I worked for Dick Carter, and I worked next to Yves Marie Tanton, who was the master of drawing lines. And boy, he set a high bar for me to match. That's the Tiana 37 sail plan. Obviously too much mast rake, but what the hell did I know? I was a kid. I didn't know anything. But they built 600 of them. So there is a Valiant 40. Good old sailing a Valiant 40 is like putting on a old pair of jeans, just, it may not do everything great, but it does everything good. Very benign, forgiving, capable boat will take care of you. That's actually a Valiant 32 in a race. I like that picture because it looks like it's really fast, which it's not, but it's a good picture. There's a Valiant 40 just trucking along. There's a Valiant 47. Oh, but that version was called the 50 because they added a bowsprit. It's the same hull, Valiant. There's that Fanny that we like to pat. Just looks so right. I like that picture. That guy looks so happy, and I know he's happy because that boat is just doing his bidding. It's just not fighting him. It's just doing what he wants it to do. That's the interior of the old Valiant. That was drawn in 1974. Jesus, 1974. 2021, 1974. 47 years ago, I drew that. Can you imagine that? I didn't know my head from a hot rock. That boat was called White Eagle. That's an aluminum boat built by Jim Betts, who built the carbon cutters. That boat was an aluminum hull with a composite deck, built at his yard down in Truckee, California, up in the mountains for a Seattle client. That's owned by a Seattle, it's sold now to a Seattle couple about 6 years ago. They lived on it, and then they built a nice house for themselves. Just a big old fast cruising boat. There's the interior. This is one of the last hand-drawn drawings I did. So when you look at this drafting, this is about as good as I got at hand drafting. And I was good. I was good. I mean, that was good. That's the interior of, it's called Wild Horses now. That's back when it was called White Eagle. I like that boat. There it is. I mean, look, how can you argue with that? Damn good looking boat. That's remember the aluminum boat Yoni for the dentist? That's the whole lines of Yoni. And that drawing is sort of a hybrid drawing of computer drafting and hand drafting. Just when I was making the transition into computer drawn lines, when my friend Graham Shannon wrote a program for doing lines on a computer, and I told him, get out of here. There's no way a computer can do the lines. And so he left, and hat in hand, and kept trying to peddle his thing. This is a long time ago. And then one day he stopped by and he said, oh, I said, get out here. I'm busy. I'm trying to design an 8-foot dinghy. And it's tough. 8 feet is hard. And he said, well, I've got my program. I've got my computer in the car. I said, well, all right, bring your computer up. And then like an hour later, he designed the dinghy that I was trying to design. And I said, okay, I'll buy your program. I think I paid him $800 cash. Bought the program out of the trunk of his car. And from there on, I was designing hulls using a computer program. And Graham and I are good friends to this day. That's Yoni again, the aluminum boat. And that's the end of my talk.
Great.
Thank you, Bob.
That was amazing.
That was really interesting, and what a history of design. Wow.
Well
You-
done. Yeah,
Does
very
anyone-
Here,
Any
here.
questions for Bob? I have one question, and I'm impressed by how you know the history of all of the boats that you've designed and had built and know all the owners. I mean, do you stay in close touch with all of these boats and the owners? How does that work?
That's a good question. No, I really didn't until Facebook.
Facebook, of course.
And one day I'm looking at Facebook, and I don't know squat about Facebook. But one day I'm piddling around on Facebook, and I see this thing, Robert Perry, yacht designer, fan club. I thought, oh, what the fuck? This has got to be some kind of joke. So I went there, and this lady had started this fan club, and she had done a nice job, and it was up and running, and there were about 330 members. You had to apply to join, so I applied, and I had to answer the questions to see if I qualified, and I qualified, and now there's 6,800 members.
Oh my God.
And what it's done, it's got me in contact with all these people,
Oh, yeah.
all these boat owners all over the world. I mean, I'm on first name basis with so many of them, right? And I never would have, and my wife used to laugh at me and kid me about being on Facebook, but no, and it's been huge for my consultation business. It's been huge for my book sales. My book sales have been great, and that's all through Facebook. And for me, just getting photographs of my boats, all these owners sending me photographs, because I was never a photographer. And I tried, but I just never had the eye for photography. So I gave up. So I had no photographs of a lot of these boats. And all of a sudden I'm getting flooded with all these owners' photographs of boats. So yeah, I remember a lot of them, but it's because, I don't know why it's because, but Facebook has sure helped.
Yeah.
But they're the boats are my children. These are my children, right? I'm intimately connected with them. I can't forget my designs, and I seldom forget a client's name, but they're my kids, and that's my family.
Wow.
Have you seen an increasing demand for multi-hulls?
I don't look. I pretend. You're either a multi-hull guy or you're a monohull guy. For me, sailing, I've sailed my 54-foot cat. I've sailed that, and I've got a buddy on the next beach. He's got a Farrier trimaran. I go out with him. But for me, if you're not heeling over, what's the point? I like to heel over, right? I mean, because the trimaran, you don't know if you're going fast unless you look back at the wake. Oh wow, look at that wake. I mean, it must be going fast. But I want to feel the boat heeling over and feel that whole dynamic. So no, I'll never be a multi-hull guy.
Is it fair to say you got into the design for aesthetics? And if so, then how did you learn the engineering, ballast, sail design, mast, all of that?
I don't know. I can remember as a kid, looking at discussions about stability, thinking, how am I going to figure this out? But I knew in my head, if you want to be a yacht designer, you had better figure it out.
Yeah.
And I was the kind of kid that I wasn't good at math in school, but that was you doing algebra. You got X, Y, Z, and B, and A, and all those things. I couldn't figure it out. But when I got to sailboats, it wasn't X, Y, and B. It was beam, displacement, length over, all these numbers that were abstract in high school. all of a sudden were real things.
Made sense to him.
And so they weren't numbers to me. They were things. And I had a tactile connection to them. I understand this. We say displacement to length ratio 261. I see a shape. I don't see a number. I see a shape. So you just fight through and figure it out. And one day you figure out, oh, I'm better than that other guy, you know, and sometimes the guys that rely on all the numbers aren't so good. And what would be the point of being
Pretty well renewed.
facile with all the numbers and not being able to produce a beautiful boat? Because you have to produce a beautiful boat. That's what it's all about. And you have to produce a beautiful boat with beautiful numbers. And look, if I can do it, anybody can do it. Not that hard. You just have to work at it for 50 years.
Bob, this is Frank. I'm from Seattle. I used to go to your rendezvous. Loved to your band.
Well,
and my wife, Kiki, can rest in the bow in the biggest storm in the history of God while I'm out there in a bad weather situation. And we love the downstairs when the weather is just for us. It's sexy and it's we're in Florida now.
Frank, you're cutting in and out, and I cannot really understand what you're saying.
Maybe this is better.
That's much better. It's much better.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm from Seattle. I went to your rendezvous many times and danced to your band. Loved every minute.
Good for you. I
And
have
so
I have pictures of you dancing.
Yeah, but I'm with a different wife now.
I have pictures of her dancing with another guy.
But I got to tell you, she is a champion of the Tiana 37. We love it down here in Venice, Florida.
Oh.
And we've been to Cuba. We've been to a lot of places, but we love below deck. The teak you've mentioned, we love it all. But she can sleep during the roughest storm up in the bow. And I tell you,
Oh, you married an old guy, old woman, huh?
And when we're out sailing, I tell you, the dolphins, and up in Seattle, the whales, they know the feel and vibration of that hull. They will follow us. We've had 50 dolphins follow us for a long time. So it's not just above deck. It's what happens when that hull hits the water.
Well, there's a great story from years back when a Valiant 40 was followed by a gray whale for 3 days. Gray whale trying to mate with the Valiant. I mean, literally up next to the Valiant with a 4-foot-long erection, and the crew of the Valiant climbing off and standing on the back of the whale. But the whale flapped around and sort of cracked the back of the rudder. So it wasn't funny for long. And they tried everything they could do to get rid of the whale. They played music as loud as possible. They finally went in and anchored, and everybody stayed real still. And then the whale went away. But yeah, they like my bottom. Okay.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a question about building. So by the time someone comes to you and they want you to design a boat, have they have their own builder in mind, or is that part of the process? Do you make recommendations as to who would be best to build this boat?
I'd say it's about 50-50. Sometimes they've gone to the builder first, and sometimes they haven't. Sometimes I say, well, I'll pick a builder, but it's about 50-50.
Okay.
I mean, I know builders I like to work with, and builders I would avoid.
Thanks.
So you never had any formal naval architecture classes? You just absorbed it by looking at all these designs over years and years?
Yeah, I did.
Wow.
I did. I actually got hired by Evergreen State College in Washington to teach naval architecture when I first opened my office here, which is a damn good thing because they paid me $2,500 a month for 2.5 days a week work, which allowed me to survive when I first opened my office. But no, I didn't have any formal training. It's pretty hard to get formal training in yacht design. There's a school in England in Southampton that does a 4-year program in yacht design. It's extremely good, very thorough. But I don't know of another program in the world that teaches yacht design. You can do naval architecture, but that's big ship stuff, tugboats and cruise ships and that. But yacht design, there's no money in it, so nobody wants to teach it. But you read and you look and you study and you do it with the energy of a 16-year-old kid. You know how much energy that is. I mean, I could have been a brain surgeon at 19 for the energy I put in. It just consumed my life. In the band, we're driving all over the Pacific Northwest, and I've got my yacht design books in the back of the van, and I'm reading about yacht design while we're driving off to the next gig. And the other guys just laughed at me.
Have you sailed on every boat that you designed and built?
No. There's a handful that I never got to sail. Logistics made it difficult for me to get to the boat. And, before my back injury, I was 6'3". I think I'm 5'3" now, but before my back injury, I was 6'3". And my thing was with the client, I'll be there whenever you want me, just let me know. But I will not fly coach. So I wanted first class airfare. I didn't care where I stayed. I was happy to sleep on a boat, but I'm not flying coach. It's physically painful for me. So most people were pretty good with that, but some people not. But that pretty much sailed on probably, I'd say 92.7% of my boats I've sailed on.
Do you have a favorite design?
No. They're my children. Come on. You pick your favorite kid. You can't do that. It depends on the day. If I look at if I measure my boats in client satisfaction, I would have to say Night Runner. Remember Night Runner, the wooden cutter? The owner died a year ago because he kept that boat for that boat. I went up to look at the lofting for that boat. I got to the boatyard to check the lofting, and the boat builder came out and said, "Your wife just called. She's gone into labor." And this is like a ferry and an hour's drive from Seattle. So that was my son, Max. So he's about 42 years old. So 42 years ago, they built Night Runner. And that owner kept Night Runner for all those years, and he used it. He put lots of miles on that boat. So in terms of owner satisfaction, I'd have to say Night Runner. For me, Francis Lee, Frankie, the 62-foot, 9-foot 10 beam double ender would be closer to one of my favorites, but depends how you want to measure it, right? Just depends on how you want to measure it. Okay.
Bob, how important do you think Francis Stokes and the Valiant 40 and the, I guess it was the Golden Globe around the world racing, how important do you think that was to your career?
Oh, hard to say. Certainly put the Valiant 40 on the map. So if you took the Valiant 40 out of my oeuvre, would I still be where I am today? Yeah, I think so. I think I would. I wasn't going to quit, you know. I was, but he gave us credibility, you know. So for that boat, he gave us credit. He was a fabulous guy, and he gave us credibility. So I wouldn't downplay it. That's the kind of thing that's hard to measure objectively.
Bob, I hope you're feeling better very soon. It was really, really gracious of you to continue to fulfill this commitment to talk to us despite being in so much pain. We're very grateful. It was fantastic.
I took an oxycodone before I started.
Good for you. Good for you. That should help.
I went all day without one. It was about the longest I go.
You timed it perfectly. Of all the, you know, all the boats are so lovely, so beautiful. The lines are just stunning. But I really appreciated the fact that you still had that the design from when you were 19. You could clearly see the elegance in the lines and the attention to detail and the sophistication of your insight into the boat design. And I'm glad you listened to yourself and not everybody else who was laughing, because so many people have benefited from it. It's really beautiful work, a nice lifetime of gorgeous design.
Thank you very much. What's your name?
Robin.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you very much.
May I say something?
Yeah.
I'm not a member of the club, but I'm one of Bob's groupies from the Facebook page. And the one thing I will say is, you know, Bob and I are the same age.
Who are you?
Eric Moschness.
Okay, Eric.
And what I like to tell people is that I may be ancient, but I'm not a dinosaur. And you can say that about Bob. I mean, because when you get involved with the discussion with him and you hear him talk about the design, he's still pushing the envelope today. I mean, the Valiant 40, remember, that was this lightweight boat that who could ever go off cruising in it? I mean, it would be dangerous, right?
That's exactly right.
Like that cruising.
Designer Ray Richards, who never really made it very big as a designer, but he wrote an article in Yachting Magazine. He said the Valiant 40 was too light to be considered a serious offshore cruising boat.
Exactly.
Well, today when people say it's too heavy.
But today, Bob's telling us that, you know, you don't need a connected rudder. You don't need a skeg hung rudder. You know, I can design you a spade rudder, carbon fiber, as strong as you can possibly get, and it's going to be stronger than anything else you can do. So, and that's what I'm talking about. At 74, he's still pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
And as an old man myself, I love that.
Well, you push the envelope or the envelope pushes you, right? All right. I'm tired, guys.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Bob.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Let
Well,
me,
thank you, Bob.
This was great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, good night, everybody.